and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 260, and today's date is January 10th, 2014, and the title of this episode is Unemployment is Down and Terrorism is on the Rise. And we are going to get right into the economic collapse news, and we're going to continue with what I called yesterday's report, the illusion of a recovery. And here we are with Greece reporting that their unemployment is reaching new highs of 27.8%. It was at 27.7%. It just went up to 27.8% at this time. And the Greek industrial production declines for the fifth consecutive month, and it just is not looking good in Greece. And across the Eurozone, the economy shrank by 0.3%, and we are not seeing things improving anywhere, even though the propaganda is out there telling us that things are getting better, it all looks great, the recovery is here, we see unemployment numbers going down, but we all know that this is a complete illusion and it is not real. Canada right now, we are seeing statistics from Canada. They estimate that around 45,900 jobs were lost in December, well below the consensus forecast for about 14,100 gain, and that shot up their unemployment to 7.2%. It was at 6.9%. So we can see things are definitely getting worse. And here in the U.S., they love to keep the illusion going. They manipulate all the numbers. They manipulate the stock market. They control the entire market, so everyone is confused of what is going on. Because when you hear what is happening out in the corporate media, and they're telling you that they were expecting 194 thousand jobs, and it was only 74,000, whatever the numbers were. They were much lower. All of a sudden the unemployment rate drops, and we are seeing that this doesn't even make sense. And right now, as I discussed yesterday, stores were reporting a decline in sales. And we know that Target was hit with many millions of people getting their credit cards stolen and their PIN numbers stolen. But Target right now came out saying that their store sales fell between 2 to 6% during the fiscal fourth quarter after they announced the data breach. And of course, was it just the data breach, or are they using that as a cover of what really happened? Because many of the other stores are showing that the sales are completely down, way below Target. And if we look at Dell right now, they're saying they're going to be laying off some staff here, about 20 to 30%. And because what's happening is they just do not have the PC sales right now. And this goes on to say that Dell is looking to cut around 20% of its U.S.-based sales staff and 30% of its sales and marketing staff from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And this is going to lead into a cut in manufacturing and more layoffs, and we can see what is happening right now. Now, you would never think in Hollywood, where they create all these movies, they would actually have layoffs. And right now, the motion picture industry lost around 14,000 jobs in December. And we can see this is just hitting every single place. Now, on Long Island, there were around 1,500 plus people lining up for 500 jobs that were available, and these were not full-time jobs. These were apprentice jobs, and they were paying $17 an hour. So we have 1,500 plus people lined up to apply for 500 jobs that was paying $17. Does this look like a recovery? Does it look like that the unemployment should be at 6.7%? It just doesn't really make sense. Right now, Sears, as I discussed yesterday, had declining sales, and one of the financial people were on the news saying that Sears is entering a death spiral along with JCPenney, and we can see that these retailers might be gone by 2017 or sooner, because the economy is just not there to support them at this time. But don't worry, Obama is out there, and he's letting everyone know that this is going to be a year of action. And what struck me very what struck me as strange as when he was saying this, he says, we've got to make sure that this recovery, and then he said, which is real. Now, why would he say that? Leaves nobody behind. So what he said was, we've got to make sure that this recovery, which is real, leaves nobody behind. That just goes to show me that this economy is no way real at all. It is impossible for it to be real. So what are we looking at here? Well, they came out and they said only 74,000 jobs added in December, and they expected it was 197,000 people. And of course, they're blaming the weather, they're blaming the solar flares, they're blaming the cold, they're blaming the sky's blue, they blame everything, except for that the economy is not doing well. And the unemployment rate, of course, went from 7.0% to 6.7%. And the main reason for this is because a lot of people fell off, and we also have to remember, in December, a lot of those jobs were part-time because of the Christmas season. And if we look closely at this, we see that the construction industry lost around 16,000 jobs. And if we look even closer, construction on a non-seasonal adjusted basis, construction jobs plummeted by a whopping 216,000. Now, in a real estate boom where everything is recovering and real estate is doing really well and prices are going up, shouldn't more construction people have jobs? Shouldn't we have more building going on? Shouldn't more people be taking out loans? Shouldn't mortgage departments be expanding? And this goes exactly to retail. If retail and unemployment is coming down, retail should be expanding. People will have more disposable income. People have jobs. This is what you normally see. We see the opposite, because what they're doing is they're creating the illusion with these numbers, and they do not match what is actually happening in the economy. And this really happened in 1929, where the stock market was up around 400 or so points. The economy, people were standing on bread lines, people could make ends meet. And back then, of course, you didn't have the internet, and so people were believing that everything was okay. And they were just pushing those people aside and saying, oh no, those were the dregs of the society, and don't look at them. But now you have the internet, and you can see more people coming out and saying, no, there is a problem. Something is wrong. These numbers just don't make sense. And actually, it is bleeding into the corporate media. I actually saw it on CNN and other news agencies where they're saying that people are falling off of the employment because they are no longer looking for work. And also, I see now that they're trying to make the case, well, it's happening. It's people are retiring, and that's why people are falling off. But if you actually look at the statistics, there is no difference for the amount of people retiring. Actually, those retirees are actually taking on jobs right now because they can't make ends meet. So you would think that you would have more people in the labor force, but they're taking on part-time jobs. So the whole thing is a bunch of BS how they're trying to spin this at this time. And during December, of course, out of the 74,000 jobs that were added in December, 55% of those were temporary part-time work. And we are seeing that the people not in the labor force right now soared to a record 91.8 million people, and the participation rate plunged to 1978 levels. And if we look at this, it is completely down from 62.8% from 63%. And let's look a little bit closer here. How many jobs were actually created in 2013 compared to 2012? Well, let's take a look. Now, if we use common sense, we would think that more jobs were created in 2013 than 2012 because the unemployment has come down, right? Well, that's not the case. In 2012, 2.376 million jobs were created. In 2013, only 1.374 were created. And that's million. 1.374 million were created. So it is completely heading in the opposite direction. But unemployment is coming down. So something is not driving here, and this is why things really do not make sense out there in the world of recovery, because we know it is completely an illusion. Now, I made the case a while back that the Fed will not continue with its tapering. They said they were tapering in January. They actually haven't really done it yet. And there is no way that they're going to let this happen. Even though these numbers are coming down, people are completely falling off of unemployment. And of course, we have the 1.3 million people who are falling off, and they're still battling in Congress if they should give the unemployment benefits or not give the unemployment benefits. And if these people actually fall off, the unemployment numbers are going to come down to 6% now, to 5.5%, because as time goes on, more and more people are going to fall off unemployment because they don't get the extended unemployment. But we know that the Fed cannot taper, and then what this means is they'll have to do a full-on taper. So right now, the Fed, of course, is hinting that because of Obamacare, because of what is happening and the turmoil in the healthcare industry and what Obamacare might do to the economy, the Fed might have to increase QE, and, I don't know, we'll call it QE5. We might have to, ramp it up. And they're trying now to get out of this tapering and blame it on something else. Now, of course, they're always changing the rules and always trying to blame it on something else. Like during the government shutdown, they're saying the economy was falling apart because of the shutdown. They were blaming the government because they didn't realize how long this was going to go on. And of course, as soon as the shutdown was over, everything was back to normal. And now we have them saying that the economy is getting better with all these manipulated numbers, them controlling the market, actually them being the market. And they're trying to make their case that the economy is getting better, and they're trying to show people like, oh, look, we're tapering. And now we see them going to blame this on Obamacare, which I don't believe they're going to be able to do this. They're just trying to put it out there and let everyone know that there could be problems in the distant future, but I do believe we're going to see a major, major event, because they're going to need something big for them to really ramp this up. Because let's just put it this way. If they use Obamacare to say we're going to increase QE, the rest of the world is going to go, whoa, 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 wait a minute. You're increasing QE because now you're saying the economy is not doing well because of the health care turmoil? It's just not going to go well outside of this country. And if they see this, other countries are going to say, okay, you know what? We're making deals with China. We're making deals with Russia. We're not buying any more of this debt anymore because this whole thing is an illusion, and we need to start, tapering ourselves and getting out of it. And what's going to happen is Treasury bonds are not going to be purchased. That means the Fed's going to have to purchase them. Dollars are going to come back to the United States. So I believe the government, the Fed, they need something bigger, so it's not to be blamed on the government or the Fed. It would be better if it was blamed on another country, and I believe this is how they're going to move. This is what they're going to try to do. Now, China has just become the biggest trading nation with a total trade standing at $4.16 trillion in 2013. The U.S. is scheduled to release its full-year figures in February, but its trade for the first 11 months from January to November totaled around $3.57 trillion, making China potentially the world's biggest trader. But again, who knows? The United States could manipulate the numbers and put the United States back on top by manipulating everything that you see in front of us, as they have done with GDP, which they have done with inflation, which they have done with unemployment. So it wouldn't be surprising if they actually did this. Now, there was a report out there saying that the Obamacare requirement for you to sign up for health insurance is not really true, and you cannot be penalized. In Federal Law 42 U.S.C. Section 18115, freedom not to participate in federal health insurance program, and this goes on to say that no individual, company, business, nonprofit entity, or health insurance issuer offering group or individual health insurance coverage shall be required to participate in any federal health insurance program created under this Act or any amendments made by this Act, or in any federal health insurance program expanded by this Act or any such amendments, and there shall be no penalty or fine imposed upon any issuer for choosing not to participate in such programs. Now, I have to check further into this to see if this is absolutely true, but right now it does look like it is, but I'm going to dive a little bit deeper and check it out to see what is what, and I'll report back on that at a later time. Now, as we know, many towns are getting these armored vehicles. All the local law enforcements are getting the vehicles. They're getting grants by DHS, or they're getting these vehicles sold at reduced prices because DHS wants every single local law enforcement to have tanks just like they do. They're uniforming the local police the same way, training them the same way, providing them with assault AR-15s, assault rifles, and they are preparing them for what is coming. Now, another town in Florida just received a new vehicle. This is a 6-wheel, 30-ton armored, mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicle, and it was lightly used, has around 5,000 miles. It's worth about $700,000, but don't worry, they got it for $2,000. Now, they are doing this on purpose because they are trying to take over all local law enforcement. Ooh, tongue-tied there. And they are trying to federalize all of these police, local law enforcement police station areas. And they are doing this because they want total control over the entire country, because it will make it easier for them to go from a centralized location and have the ability to control each one of the town's local law enforcement and send down the orders of what to do. And of course, now they have the tanks, now they have the equipment, now they have the AR-15s, and they are ready to handle the American population. And this is going to be before, during, and after the collapse. And this is why this is all being done at this time. Now, in my other reports, I did report that that DHS is putting forth the Real ID standard. They have about 20 states that are going along with this. And again, we understand that there's a 100-mile constitutional free zone coming in from anywhere that we're bordering a country or along the seashore. And that's pretty much all around the most populated areas where the big cities are. And the DHS wants every single state to get into this, because it will take all your information, put it up to a federal centralized database system, so they have the ability to use it as checkpoints and to keep track of you and to make sure that you are a citizen of the United States in these constitutional free zones. And right now, Ohio is refusing to enforce the Real ID standards, and this goes on to say that the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles decided about 5 months ago to back off the Real ID compliant plan approved by the Federal Department of Homeland Security. Ohio state officials take issue with Homeland Security's demand that all relevant personal data, including birth certificates, medical records, be stored and shared with the federal agencies. And the objection is that it's not acceptable in many circles in Ohio to do facial recognition on everyone who comes in to get a license, said Joe Andrews, spokesman for the Ohio Department of Public Safety. And people have concerns we are trampling their rights if we do this. Forcing Americans to carry around an identification card to firmly prove citizenship offends our basic concept of freedom. And of course, what is happening is that those states that do not comply with DHS is going to make it very difficult for them. And what they're going to do is you will not be able to board planes because you do not have a Real ID. They are going to make it very difficult, especially when this goes into full-blown and they start setting up checkpoints between states, you will not be able to enter a state without the Real ID, and they will just make it very difficult for states and for the populations of these states to do anything that they need to do during their course of life. And we can see how they can put pressure on states, on the state governments, to follow what they want. And this is what's going to happen. Now, the Russian military will now be given full use of the Cypriot air base and the main port in Cyprus, and the air base will be only used for emergency scenarios, humanitarian missions, but will be able to they will be able to use this if some type of emergency situation or some type of military operation is needed. And we can see that Russia is really planting its feet in the Mediterranean. They're already using a port in Egypt right now, and they are building up their forces in this area. Now, the Pentagon is out there, and they're on the watch for disruptive technology worldwide. They are concerned about potential military consequences of a surge of high-tech innovation in China and other nations. The Pentagon is creating a program to track and analyze emerging technology research and patents, military records, and interview shows. And I thought we already had this, and I thought that was called the NSA, where they just pretty much spied on everyone. Well, they're starting this new program where they're going to be spying everywhere, and most likely here in the U.S. also. And the Pentagon has launched a new project called Technology Watch Horizon Scanning, which aims to track developing technologies around the world that could either aid U.S. military efforts or seriously disrupt existing military plans. So basically, they're going to spy on other countries and try to get patent information and technology information and develop it here. And they're going to do that most likely inside the United States also, just like the NSA is doing. And Technology Watch tracks key technology buzzwords on phone calls, on the internet, through email, through cell phones, any type of way. They are looking for certain buzzwords, and they will hone in on those words to get the information. Horizon scanning was designed to look for the emergence of new scientific concepts and technology applications with disruptive potential. So they are going into full-blown spying. The NSA is spying. DHS has their fusion centers, and they're spying. What are they so afraid of? They are afraid of everything that is out there that will relieve them of their power. They're afraid when the collapse comes, the people will rise up. They're afraid. That's what they're all afraid of. Now, we understand that the war effort, the pivot to Asia, has been building up. The United States has been sending military assets across the ocean to the Pacific Ocean, setting up missile bases in Guam, creating a new base in Japan, bringing in more sophisticated weapons. We understand that Japan has created a secrecy law. We understand that Japan has created their first warship since World War II. We understand that Japan is trying to create a nuclear weapon, and they're trying to change their constitution from a pacifist to a more aggressive nation where they can wage war on someone if something happens. And right now, because of, and this is what the U.S. leadership is saying, because of China's bullying tactics in the East China Sea and South China Sea, will only increase with its expanding military might, despite President Obama's much heralded pivot to Asia. Pivot is not enough. Washington must elevate regional military cooperation if China is to be deterred. And our current strategy of not confronting China directly and hoping China will change its aggressive tactics is clearly not working. A new strategy is required if we are to retain our leadership position as the key element in maintaining peace and stability in the Western Pacific. While many Asian states prefer to cooperate militarily with the United States on a bilateral basis, long-standing hostility between many of them have prevented the building of a formal intra-Asian military arrangement. An Asian NATO would be ideal, and this is what they are pushing for. They are pushing for all the Asian countries to come together and build an Asian NATO to counter China when the time comes, and this is the direction they are moving in. Now, Russia is making a deal with Iran, and they are negotiating an oil for goods swap that would let Iran lift oil exports up substantially in defiance of the Western sanctions. Russia and Iran sources close to the negotiations said final details were in discussion for a barter deal that would see Moscow buy up about 500,000 barrels a day of Iranian oil in exchange for Russian equipment and goods. Now, as we know, the U.S. is losing complete control of the Middle East, and they can't bring in armed forces and put boots on the ground, because the American people would say, hey, wait a minute, wait. We are not going back in there and start a war because you told us, that area is secure, and we pulled troops out of there, and we are not starting a war over again. Because once everyone realizes that these al-Qaeda factions, which are the people rising up, wanting their countries back, once they figure this out, they're going to say, hey, wait a minute, I thought we went in there to, get rid of the people that were the problem, and now these people want the country back. Well, as time goes on and people realize that the only reason we went into these countries was to capture the natural resources, sell their oil using the U.S. dollar, everyone is going to get really, really angry and annoyed. So what they're trying to do at this point is the Obama administration is considering providing new training to elite Iraqi forces in Jordan as U.S. officials seek ways to help the government. They're going to try everything besides putting boots on the ground, and this is what normally happens. Normally what happens is they'll send in military assets, they'll send in aid, they'll send in drones, because they're trying to weed out the al-Qaeda terrorists, and this allows them to bring in and give aid to these countries because they're terrorists, and we're tracking them and hunting them down. And this is happening in Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, all over the place here in Africa. And then what happens is they will bring in troops to train the Iraqi people, the Lebanese people, the Libyan people, the African people, and this is what they'll do. We're there to help them train. Then they'll get fired upon, and now they'll say, well, now they're attacking us, so we need to bring in troops to protect. And this is how they slowly, incrementally move into the countries, and before you know it, we have troops in every single one of these countries. Now, as we know, the U.S. officials have been building up terrorism. Al-Qaeda is coming back. We have to be afraid. We have all different names for all the different terrorists, the Syrian, the bomb makers coming in through the Canadian borders. DHS lost track of all these Al-Qaeda operatives. Iranians are using passports and different ways of getting people in here, and there's, terrorists are just running around the country like crazy. And of course, they're continually building this up further and further. And right now, a senior American intelligence official have warned that some American citizens who have visited Syria might be recruited by al-Qaeda-linked insurgent groups to attack targets inside the United States. I mean, this is shocking. I can't believe, that this will happen. I mean, they are building the case and letting everyone know that this is coming. The FBI is now trying to track the citizens who have returned home from Syria. We are focused on trying to figure out what our people are up to, who should be spoken to, who should be followed, who should be charged, said FBI Director James Comey. And they are continually doing this and building up the propaganda. And of course, remember back in 2013, President Obama was out there saying that Al-Qaeda was declining, and now it's a shadow of its former self. But General Mattis was out there, or Mattis was out there saying that President Obama was completely wrong. Al-Qaeda is not a shadow of its former self. Al-Qaeda is stronger, more powerful, has better weapons, has better tactics than it ever has in the past. And he said al-Qaeda, despite the U.S. assassination of Osama bin Laden in 2012, has also found new areas of operation. Most of the franchises, particularly in Africa, were not controlled by bin Laden's successor, Ayman Zawahiri. And they are building this up, letting you know that al-Qaeda is everywhere. They are in the United States, they are in the Middle East, they are in Africa, and they're taking over everything. But we understand the Middle East al-Qaeda and the African al-Qaeda are the people rising up against their countries. The al-Qaeda here in the U.S. are the CIA operatives who are going to plan the terrorist attack to blame it on al-Qaeda and get us into a war, because al-Qaeda, this al-Qaeda faction, lone wolf group, came from Syria. This one came from Africa. This one came from, wherever, Iran. And this is how they are playing the game right now. Now, in Sochi, we understand that the Olympics is coming. And right now, FBI, they are sending personnel to secure the Olympic area. And earlier, the Russian media reported that Russian security forces had come across unexplained deaths and explosive devices in a region near Sochi. And the U.S. government has offered our full support to the Russian government in security preparations for the Sochi Olympic Games, and we would welcome the opportunity for closer cooperation for the safety of athletes, spectators, and other applicants in the area. And what we can see happening here, this could possibly be a setup for some type of terrorist attack, because the FBI is over there. And this also goes on to say that the U.S. ski and snowboard team this year will be overseen by a private security firm, which plans to have as many as 5 aircraft on standby in case of a medical security emergency in Sochi. And we can see what is happening. They could be building the case for some type of false flag event. And if you notice, they built this up before the Olympics with these bombings that occurred, and no group has taken responsibility for what happened. And now today, all of a sudden, the U.S. issues a travel alert for Sochi Olympics. Now, last time they did this was the Middle East travel alert and the lockdown of the Middle East, and all of a sudden we had that false flag attack in Syria. And then they said, wait a minute, now there's a travel and alert in the Sudan area, and all of a sudden we're at war because of al-Qaeda in Sudan. And now here we are with the Sochi Olympics, and the U.S. State Department is advising Americans going to the Winter Olympics in Sochi to be vigilant about their security due to potential terrorist threats, crime, and uncertain medical care. Large events like the Olympics are an attractive target for terrorists, and Americans should be aware of their surroundings, exercise good judgment and discretion if they use public transportation. And we can see they are building this up completely. Something could occur during the Olympic time period. And to take this a little bit further and to keep the propaganda out there, they just want you to know, because of what Edward Snowden did and his leaks, terrorists are changing their patterns based on the information leaked by the former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. And we know this is all BS. We know they are building this up, and they're building the propaganda because we know something is about to happen. And this goes on to say, Snowden's real acts of betrayal place America's military men and women at greater risk around the world. It places the U.S. at greater risk, and I wouldn't be surprised if this event happens either in Russia at this point or the U.S., and they can say, see, this is what happened. We had the spying going on because of Edward Snowden. Look what happened. They brought down the economy, and here we are today. Now the Fed has to increase QE, and we can see how this is all going to play out. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.